I gave up. Honestly, it was a surrender of absolutely everything. My soul, my heart, my mind, and my body. It all surrendered at once. I wasn't sure who God was or what it was, but I gave it one last call. I said, and I didn't do it out of fear or anger or pleading. It was just like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's in your hands. And at that moment, everything changed. Everything went silent. Thousands of boulders had been lifted off my chest. Voices from stadiums had been quiet. Um, just absolute peace. And then I heard this big booming voice. Are you ready? Well, something answered my call. I wasn't going to hesitate to think about yes or no. I just screamed out yes with that same voice that cried out. And that's when I felt my heart stop and I was separated from my body instantly.
Wow. Oh! Hey, what's up, good people? It's Eric Taylor back with another amazing episode of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. Today, this is episode 273. I have an amazing NDE survivor, author, death doula, and spiritual life coach, Miss Brianna Lafferty. Bri, welcome to the show. How are you today, my friend?
I am so fantastic and so grateful you have me on your show today.
Well, listen, I have to tell everybody we met kind of, and then kind of not, but we kind of met a little bit at the Phoenix International Association of Near-Death Studies conference, where you were on a panel speaking about your NDE with a few other people. And I was there as well on a panel sharing my NDE story. So we definitely kind of swim in the same circles now and have that as a common experience. I guess I really want to start with your childhood, because you growing up, I want you to share with the audience where you're from and all that, but you had a tough childhood with dealing with some serious health issues. What did you experience?
Yeah, I'd love to start from the beginning. That's where it all started. When I was really young, I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary before I was 10, except for all my friends had so much more energy than I did.
Hmm.
All of them could run up and down the hills and play sports and rollerblade and skateboard and bike ride all day long and not show any signs of being tired. So I thought they were all just faking it like I was. Well, come to age 10, and I started getting some weirder symptoms, more than just being tired, that I did not see my friends or other people experience. I started twitching, and then I started getting these muscle cramps, and my parents just thought it was growing pains, and I'd be tall like my dad. If you ever see me at a conference or standing up, I'm not that tall. So that wasn't what's happening. And things kept progressing and getting worse. I started experiencing nerve pain, full body tremors,
Hmm.
and non-epileptic seizures,
Oh my
and
goodness.
no idea what was going on. So I also started experiencing a lot of anxiety, depression, and insomnia, and all this while going through female puberty.
Oh,
So that time is actually, if
so
you,
wait,
any of
wait.
your female,
From 10, let me ask you this. From 10,
yeah.
did it just each year, like 11, 12, did it just get more intensified?
I wouldn't say like annually it got worse. It just progressively got worse over that
Okay.
time. And I think things started becoming worrisome around age 14. So it was 4 years of just like crazy, painful, weird body movements.
Mm.
As things kept progressing and my puberty, kind of the transitional phase was over, it was like, maybe this is something we should get checked out.
Yeah.
So we started going to doctors, and no one knew what was wrong with me. And I was either, they're like, I don't know, go see this. I was run through tests. And each test at first was so exciting. Like, oh, thank goodness I don't have this, this, or this, or this. And then by the end of it, it was like, oh my gosh, not another test, not another unknown answer, not more waiting, not more, not more. Like I couldn't do it anymore. It was exhausting and so terrifying to do another test just to know that the result was going to come back inconclusive or negative. And
Right.
it became really difficult.
I can imagine. So, Bri is a Capricorn rising. She was born on a full moon, right? The Aries moon in the fourth house and the Libra sun in the 10th house, right conjunct her Mars. And it's funny because when you said 10 years old, that's sort of the magic age that I like to ask my clients, like, who were you when you were 10 years old? And you just gave us such insight, but that connects to the 11th house in astrology with groups and friends. And as you described that, I was thinking because you have your Pluto and Scorpio there and Ceres, the goddess of harvest, which can deal with like how we are nurtured and cared for, food, things like that. It being conjunct Pluto, it can, in a way, show a transformation to your health or to your body or your energy. Pluto's magnetic energy. So did you, as you started to become and feel sick and the twitching, did it affect how you were digesting or even the desire to eat? How did that play out?
Um, so real quick, I want to go back to something you just mentioned I didn't know anything about. Also, at 10 years old, I moved from all of my friends. We moved states. I had this huge group of friends, 12 girls on my street, all my age. Their little sisters were my sister's age, and we moved to nowhere. And I
Oh
had
no.
not a single girl my age within half the town. And I lost all my friends. The school was very like bully-some, and so that's an interesting thing that also happened kind of around that time. But
Wow.
as far as food goes, I did not have any problems with digestion. Um, I'm not really sure how I felt about food at the time. I think I really leaned, I'm trying to carbs, but I was also, a preteen, a teenager who
Yeah.
doesn't love carbs.
I know that's my issue still now as an adult. Oh my gosh. So, okay, so one thing that I see in your chart that can kind of explain a lot of things, and then from there you can take us to kind of, more of testing and the discovery of figuring out what was going on. You have in the Capricorn ascendant, the first house is the only house of self, and it's your kind of like your I am energy, your physical appearance, your outer mask. You have the true black moon Lilith, Uranus, and Neptune. So I know we joked before when we had spoken that you were kind of like the black sheep of the family, the rebel. Everybody wanted to go right, Bri went left. But it also can, Neptune on the ascendant can sometimes give you, conjunct Uranus, very rare or unique diseases. Neptune's disease, Pluto's virus. So take us down that lane. When did they finally figure out what was going on with Bri?
Yeah. So, around 15 and 16, I started getting uh, what was more harmful than no diagnosis was misdiagnoses. They were anything from, I was diagnosed as bipolar because I also had these metaphysical gifts that the um, health community does not understand. So I admitted that I saw shadows and entities and ghosts, and then I would have these moments, these brief moments of feeling good, like, and I wanted to conquer the world and get everything done, and I had all the energy in the world. But then my body would hurt so bad for a majority of the time and I couldn't sleep, so I was exhausted. I was counting spoons. I had 6 spoons a day, and one was getting up, one was getting into the shower, one was brushing my teeth, one was combing my hair, one was getting dressed. And then by the 6th spoon, it's like, how am I going to go to school and spend 30 more spoons? So yeah, of course, not only was I tired, but I was depressed because I wanted to conquer the world. I always had a wanderlust. I wanted to achieve everything in the world. And of course I was going to be depressed about it. But when I felt like I could for that brief moment, I attempted all of it. And so they said I was manic depressive. And because I saw shadows, they went straight to bipolar 1. Um,
That's
that
terrible.
and yeah, it entered me into a catatonic state due to the medications they gave me for about 6 months. I lost a whole semester of school, a whole
Oh
semester of
my
my life.
God.
Yeah, and luckily, my mom's always been my warrior, and she knew something was wrong. And she's like, "Well, this isn't her living either," and she got a second opinion. Got me off the medicine, said she's absolutely not bipolar. Like he understood a little better. But then, it was anything from conversion disorder, go see a therapist. It's, some kind of mental disorder, go see another therapist. And things became really, really hurtful. And I was losing myself. I really was losing myself. My church, I couldn't talk to you about the metaphysical things I saw because they're like, oh, if you're saved by Jesus Christ, it won't harm you. You won't see them. It won't touch you. They're not real. It's all in your head, or you're praising the devil basically. And
Mm.
I wasn't. And then in my family, my dad specifically and the church said, well, God will heal you if you pray hard enough. So then, after I prayed and prayed and prayed and begged and pleaded and screamed and got angry, I was like, well, why? What did I do? What? And I started replaying my whole life and even maybe past lives. What did I do to deserve this? I was in so much pain.
Oh,
And yeah, so like I lost myself like I feel almost completely in my teenage years. And um,
can
by
I
the
ask you a
time,
question though?
yeah,
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Mom was the big support. Did dad see how Western medicine was failing you, or was he kind of in denial?
He was in denial because he couldn't fix it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of what I've understood that whole thing to be. He supported all the medical testing and my mom's relentless pursuits to dive into Western medicine, holistic medicine, alternative, Chinese, whatever. I mean, he supported us financially through it all, especially when insurance cut me off after I think the bipolar diagnosis, or one of the diagnoses. They cut us off completely, and that was really really hard. So I've had a wonderful support, but my dad emotionally and mentally didn't support us, but he was there financially, and I am very grateful for that.
Okay.
Yeah. But by the time I was 18, I was done. I was like, I'm done with the doctors. They don't know what they're talking about. Nothing was working. And I I really, really did not want to see anymore. And my mom's like, just please see one more. I'm not going to send her any of your background information. She'll have no knowledge, no preconceived ideas. We'll just go.
Right.
And she was the one who diagnosed me. She said, oh my gosh, this is myoclonus dystonia. My team has never seen it. We've heard about it. It's really rare. And can we videotape you? Like we want to do research on you. We only know of this one other gal, and this is at a very reputable hospital in Denver, Colorado. So for them to be like, this is super rare, we don't know much, but this is what you have, it was some sort of relief and validation,
Yeah.
but yet we had already tried all the pharmaceuticals and treatments that they recommended. So it's like, cool, I have an answer, but no solution.
So, Henry, say it again real slow for the audience, and then explain what was that definition meaning to internal Bri's body.
So it was myoclonus dystonia, and that is a rare neurological movement disorder. And it does anything. So basically, what is happening inside the brain is the signal can't get from A to B because it's too short. And the dystonia I described it in my second book that the dystonia is trying to drive through a road and there's a roadblock and it's freaking out. It's an old shaky truck. It's just like, I don't know where to go. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And then the myoconus comes in, says, screw it, pedal to the metal, breaks through this barrier, ends up in a cornfield. No idea what's going on. It's bouncing all around. And that explains kind of the mental, psychological, and physical results of what this condition is.
Oh, Bri. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. So wait, so this is fascinating to me because I see the spiritual gifts and the sickness both in the chart. Were you knew you weren't crazy. You knew what you were experiencing on the spiritual side. Were you able to find any comfort in having these spiritual gifts, even though you were going through these physical ailments? What was your perspective on that?
No, I grew up where the spiritual gifts were of the devil. I
Right.
was told to keep them under wraps. And a lot of the gifts I had were not, I didn't think they were gifts because a lot of them were negative.
Okay.
I saw, when I was young, realized that our house had a portal in it and these dark
Wow.
entities got in. And while my sister was also still is very gifted, her life was so positive and beautiful and she was so optimistic and healthy. And then here I am. I'm scared. I'm sick. I'm tired. Who are they going to choose?
Mm.
So I also had a 15 years or 14-ish years of negative spiritual stuff. So I didn't see any of it as gifts.
Okay. Wow. So you start getting tested by this hospital in Denver, and what happened?
Um, they basically said, well, there's this brain surgery we could give you, but it's extremely experimental. We won't do that to an 18-year-old. We really don't want to do that to an 18-year-old. But we tried kind of everything else. So figure it out.
And then, I mean, but what did they do? Like, what was?
Oh, so they said it's also known as alcohol responsive myoclonus dystonia. So let's prescribe alcohol to an 18-year-old who has been dealing with this stuff for 8 years. And
What?
that's,
Wait.
yeah, that's
Honey,
that's
so
literally
they,
all they did.
are you kidding me? So, honey, they got excited because it was something that they knew what it was.
Hmm.
It was really rare. They didn't want to give you a brain surgery, but they
Hmm.
were trying to give you alcohol. And what was the reasoning for alcohol?
Because it's known as alcohol responsive myoclonus dystonia. Um, because they did the little research they've done on it, the myoclonus dystonic brain is so hyperactive that that's what causes all the anxiety, depression, muscle movements, and stuff like that, because the brain is overexcited. I mean, they say that a myoclonic dystonia brain looks like it should be having a seizure or like, I don't know, my neurologist lately explained it very well. But they're not having actual epileptic seizures. It's just so overexcited that alcohol is a depressant. And when I was 15, my first doctor without a diagnosis, wanted to prescribe me with a benzodiazepine, which is basically alcohol in pill form. And the worst part about that is he was leaving practice. There was no follow up, nothing either. So it was take a benzo and good luck, or drink and good luck. 8 years
Oh,
apart.
see, and this is why you guys, thank goodness Pluto's in Aquarius now, in the age of Aquarius, and this is where Western medicine that's absurd. And see, Uranus rules the central nervous system. So that explains that so clearly on the ascendant. Not that everybody with Uranus on the ascendant will experience what you did, but you have it, right in between the true black moon, Lilith, and Neptune. And so from the drinking alcohol, did anybody ever say, well, let's try hemp or marijuana, THC, CBD? And then if not, like, then what did you do to like figure out how to kind of heal Bri?
Yeah. So after, after 18 and I was suggested to try that, I did, and it got out of control. It helped until it didn't. So I was able to live a pretty normal life, like normal, where I felt good and I could do things. I bought my first house at 19. I went to college. I graduated high school early. Like I was able to start doing all the things I dreamt of doing. But it takes more and it takes more. So I saw this wonderful physician, and he really helped me with trying other things. And at the time, um, different this substance is legal now, but it wasn't at the time. But he would even recommend, I try different strands and what I could try. And he, helped me through different things. And I'm really appreciative of him, but unfortunately, hemp, CBD, some other stuff like that didn't work. I tried mindful meditation. That only worked temporarily, because it's fully in your 3D senses, and my 3D senses hurt. It's like, be super aware. Cool. I'm always super aware of everything. I didn't know there was any other type of meditation. So, it's kind of like at the end, and he had to leave due to his own health reasons. He was probably one of the best doctors I had had till I was 29, honestly, because he was willing to explore those other options with me, even though he couldn't prescribe many of them.
Right.
Um, so honestly, I didn't know how to heal myself. I kind of thought I wasn't going to. And I had this feeling since probably 15 that I was going to die before I was 28. It was deep rooted in me, and I just knew I would die before age 28. What I didn't know is that I would survive it.
Wow. So, okay. So you're doing well now. So what was the shift and the change?
Well, it started with my near-death experience. Huge, huge shift in me. It would take some time for me to accept and realize and appreciate the gifts that came with the NDE, which allowed for my healing.
And how old were you at the near at NDE?
25. I think that maths
Mm,
out.
25. Okay. And so share with us what happened, because 25 is the second house and that's Aquarius. So that's pretty fascinating. So what happened with your NDE?
So I was exhausted, and I sold my house, and I had a really good turnaround. I made a chunk of money, and I just knew I was going to die. So I used the proceeds and I left to go die. And when I say leave, I mean I moved 1,400 miles away from everyone and everything I knew.
And
And
were you
I was,
working at this time? Were you like gainfully employed and all this stuff with even with the
um,
pain?
so after I sold my house, I just was going to live on the proceeds for the rest of my life. Um, and I knew it wasn't going to be that long. So don't get, too crazy ideas that I made like millions of dollars on this house or anything. But I just knew that I was not going to outlive my funds.
Oh.
So I tried to get some jobs when I had moved, but nothing was panning out. My health was getting worse. I was trying everything I could to both enjoy the rest of my days and try to do anything that would give me the best end of life possible. Even though I didn't know when or how or what that would look like, because no one told me I was terminal. No one told me this condition was going to kill me or anything. Um, but they also said it wasn't progressive, so I didn't believe them because it was still progressing 15 years after it started. Um, and it kind of all converged in the matter of 2 or 3 weeks where my illness was just really bad, and the dark entities were just beating me up psychologically. And then I ended up with a flu, and ended up just having this beautiful disaster of a situation. I was so tired. I was still an insomniac, maybe sleeping only a couple hours every few nights.
Oh my
My
God.
body, yeah, my body is just exhausted from this constant movement, constant pain, constant everything. Then my
Did it affect your breathing or walking or talking in any way?
um walking, yeah, not
Hmm.
necessarily my talking, but definitely my walking and moving. Um, and I mean, and my muscles would cramp. I mean, my legs would cramp up so much I couldn't walk. My back would cramp up so much sometimes I get stuck, in weird positions and stuff. Um, you add the flu on top of it, and I was exhausted. I was out, I couldn't drink, I couldn't eat. I was kind of married between the bathroom and the bed. And the night of April 27th, 2017, I gave up. Honestly, it was a surrender of absolutely everything. My soul, my heart, my mind, and my body. It all surrendered at once. I wasn't sure who God was or what it was, but I gave it one last call. I said, and I didn't do it out of fear or anger or pleading. It was just like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. It's in your hands. And at that moment, everything changed. Everything went silent. Thousands of boulders had been lifted off my chest. Voices from stadiums had been quiet. Um, just absolute peace. And then I heard this big booming voice. Are you ready? Well, something answered my call. I wasn't going to hesitate to think about yes or no. I just screamed out yes with that same voice that cried out. And that's when I felt my heart stop and I was separated from my body instantly.
Wow. And this is 26 years old, right?
20, yeah, is that 25, 26? Something like
26.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Bri. So, okay. So that I would just tie it in with the astrology because I think it's so fascinating. That's the Pisces third house. And it's like communication. So Pisces communication is like hearing voices in the spiritual realm. And then you're like, yeah, I'm ready. And so what happened?
I was instantly separated from any idea of this humanity of Earth, of this concept named Bri or Brianna, and I was just in complete blackness. But it wasn't like eerie blackness. It was beautiful and loving and full of energy.
Hmm.
And I felt the person or the entity or the God, the source that answered that cry and that call. And it was just pure love. And I realized I was home. And even though
Hmm.
I had no concept of myself or like my Brianna self, complete concept of myself, but not of this human self. Something in my consciousness knew something had changed. And I just asked, am I dead? Well, 3 months appear out of this blackness. And then he just gave me a crap-eating grin like, if you only knew. I was like, huh, well, that's curious. Okay. And they disappear. It would take me 5 years to realize that they laughed because there's no such thing as death or being dead. How could you be a thing that does not exist? So that took me a little while to understand.
Yeah.
After they,
Wait. Let me ask you a question with that because it's funny that you say that in the way that you say that because that's not the common thought of the world or the masses. And so do you now, like you said, it took you 5 years, but do you feel that like that's more of a thought or an ideology of people who have experienced an NDE? That we realize that the soul is eternal and that we have eternal life, that energy just
transforms.
transitions and just goes to another dimension or like how like do you feel like that is more exclusive to spiritually minded people and people that go through NDEs?
I believe people who go through NDEs are more believing of it. There's tons of religions that teach that and cultures that teach that.
Yeah.
But there's always that hesitancy and that, oh, but what if, And I am ironically a death doula. People are like, why do you call yourself a death doula? Don't you think that turns people off? Yeah, but those people shouldn't be my clients because I am I am head on. Face your fears with, everything you got. I want you to embrace it. And death isn't even a thing. And are we even a thing? It's like I call myself a death doula very ironically because I want people to be less fearful of this concept called death.
So with your clients and people that you work with, and Bri, you guys, she's got to be the best deaf doula I've ever met. So often, Bri, I'll see in people's charts, I'm like, oh, you have placements like you would be a great deaf doula. Now, none of them really are, but I see where they could be. You actually are. And having Venus and Leo in the 8th house, but having that Uranus, Neptune, and Lilith in the 1st house, oh my gosh, you're the perfect guide and experience in NDE and the sickness for your clients. So, well, one, I want you to share your website and information, but how do people know, or is it you work with people that they've got a terminal illness or sickness and they know they're dying? Or do you also help people who are coming towards the end of life that feel like I'm afraid or I need some help and experience to deal with this?
Yeah, so I'm also kind of unique that I don't just deal with end of life terminal illnesses. That's also going to be more specific to hospice.
Yes.
My niches really are grief, chronic illness, and end of life challenges, and they
Okay.
all kind of go hand in hand. I mean, chronic illness may or may not lead into end of life. Grief definitely encompasses both chronic illness and end of life. End of life, just they kind of all mix around. But anyone dealing with spiritual illness or chronic illness is often related to spiritual stuff. So all of it has to do with spirituality. Spirituality has to do with all of it. So it all encompasses together. But I work with, anywhere from children to, I think my oldest client was in her 90s.
Wow.
And yeah, and not all of them have terminal diagnoses. Some of them are just scared. Some of them haven't told their story and they want to tell their story, but they don't know how. So it's just kind of random who finds me, but whoever finds me and I find them, I know it's meant to be.
Well, do you feel that in a way you are obviously like kind of best equipped and like spiritually guided to kind of help those people? And I think of it like specifically with that Venus and Leo, like you are very heart centered, and I'm sure your heart chakra must be like wide open, and you can kind of be that spiritual tour guide to let people know like it's going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And mostly what I do is I'm a mirror. I'm honestly not much more than a mirror. I help you look into the deepest parts of yourself.
Okay, so share your website, and then I want to get into your books, but share your website with the audience. So how can people reach Miss Bri?
Yeah, you can find every single way to contact me through my website, www.bri0nicllc.com.
Okay. So, and that will be down below for you guys. It's in the description. So tell us about, you are a pretty dynamic author. What books have you written? Why did you write them? And where can people find them? Are they also on the website as well?
They are all on the website. And after my near-death experience, there were I went through some more crazy stuff. It was not over. Life did not suddenly get easier and better for me. And I had kind of this moment of, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And I got back into this meditative slash self-hypnotic state in insomnia and just, kind of just like I need answers, guys. Like, why am I back? Because I also realized, oh, I've got these amazing guides with me all the time, but I don't know how to connect with them other than them just yelling at me to do something or not to do something sometimes.
Well, how
So,
long was the NDE?
oh, it was 8 minutes, and I went through 5 different dimensions. So 4 after that um, black beautiful realm that I was in, the first realm.
Okay, now you
Um,
got to tell me. So, okay, that sounds powerful. Now, I want to hear about these other dimensions because that's really fascinating.
well, and it also plays into why my business name is Brionic. Um, so the next part of my NDE was my tunnel, and I went through this vivid, bright blue and white tunnel filled with bright ones and zeros, binary code. And I'm going through it as just a soul body being downloaded with incredible information. Not sure what the information was, just that it would come to me when I needed it. And then I ended up in another space with a master ascended teacher behind me. I didn't see who they were, but I just felt that it was the ascended master teacher. And in front of me was this huge pile of numbers, the black numbers. And the only time in this experience I had a human-like body, and I pick them up and throw them up in the air with such enthusiasm, like, no wonder you love creating, because I realized the universe was created in math.
Oh my gosh.
The fourth dimension I was in was actually reminiscent of Earth, even though I still wasn't aware of Earth. It had like a grocery store, it had utility poles. Um, but the coolest part was there were other beings. I have no idea if they're ever human or not. They didn't look human. And we all communicated without speaking, and it was faster than telepathy. Um, I'd have a thought and it instantly happened. So I saw these other beings sliding down trees and covered in snow. I don't think I like snow. Instantly turned to lush green trees. I'm sliding down them. I feel like Tarzan. And I look over and I see these other beings sliding down. I'm like, what if they are experiencing their own reality of what they like? What if they like snow? They're experiencing that with me while I'm experiencing this green, and we're experiencing different realities together at the same time. Except for it wasn't such a conundrum in the space. It was just, oh, that's cool.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
Another time I tried to learn how to fly and I was terrible at it and I ended up severing my arm. No fear, no pain, nothing. And I was like, huh, what's gonna happen? And I saw it grow back with binary code. It
And
was
all
so
of
much,
this in 8 minutes. See, this is what
yeah,
people don't know. I mean, obviously for me, right, I was there on the other side forever.
yeah,
And so for me, it was such a long, 40 days is like whatever, like, oh my gosh. But that's a lot in 8 minutes. And so
yeah.
when you came back to your body, what did you feel?
So instantly fear. Instantly I felt my heart start again. Even though I hadn't known exactly what had happened, my consciousness was like, oh my gosh, I'm back alive. I'm back to life. Even though I hadn't known I died, my conscious, something new. Then I was like, oh my gosh, I've been dead for months. So I can imagine 40 days. No wonder you lived a lifetime for a few in 40 days, because I lived months in 8 minutes. And I was so scared to open my eyes. I thought I was going to be underground. My family disregarded my wishes to be cremated. Oh my gosh, this is how they bury people alive accidentally. And
Were
like
you
started
alone?
yeah, I was alone. So I was like, what am I gonna open my eyes to? And then I tried to breathe, like deep breathe and meditate and do some self hypnosis and beg and plead, just take me back. And eventually I was like, crap, I gotta open my eyes. And I did. And it looked like where I was. And it looked like the same time. I'm like, there's no way. Maybe it's a week later. But my parents knew I was really sick, so they're on their way down. Maybe it's a couple days later. And I was so confused. And I saw, I was like, it's only been 8 minutes. What happened?
Wow. So you had really you had no concept of reality or time. And in terms of what you experienced, you literally thought it could have been months or whatever, and it was only 8 minutes. So then your parents show up and you tell them what happened?
I told my mom what happened. Did not tell my dad what happened. That was quite a theme of my life. And she's been pretty spiritually aware, and I had no idea like how much research she's done, like even before I was born, into
Wow.
metaphysical and spirituality. And um, she didn't realize she'd end up with a pretty hardcore Christian husband. So luckily, she was also my spiritual warrior. She wasn't just my um, health warrior. And she's like, "Honey, I think this is what happened to you." And she was very open and reassuring. And she suggested I go to IONS and look into IONS and find some people who had these experiences. And she was
Wow.
really, really helpful with that.
Sounds like the best mom ever. Oh my God.
Absolutely.
That is so awesome. So, okay, so is this like 2018, 2019 when you connect with IAMS, or when was this?
Yeah, sometime in 2018, my sister and I went to the conference in Seattle, Washington. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, I heard all these fantastic
I've never been to
stories.
Seattle. That must have been awesome, just in general.
It was, yeah, we went to, we went and played around and, did some touristy things and the islands. But I didn't hear any stories like mine. I mean, none of them with the spiritual battles I had gone through, none of them with the dark entities leading up to it, none of them that, all of them I heard were fantastical, like instant healings and
Love
marble
and
castles
light
of
and Jesus.
healing and
Yeah.
love and light and past life reviews and relatives and Jesus and harps and the most beautiful songs and the most vivid colors. I was like, that wasn't mine. So,
And, it
okay.
made me feel like, see, because I didn't really know about NDEs before I had one. Yeah, you see some TV shows and you hear about
Yeah.
whatever, but like I wasn't like a podcast watcher of NDEs. I really didn't know that much. Anytime I did hear about it, I was always hear like what you said, right? Jesus and oh, my grandpa and love and light and my old dog and just all this positivity. And then that's not what I experienced.
Yeah. So
So,
I was like, cool, that I didn't have that. And so it would take quite a while for me to understand exactly what happened because there's this whole community of distressing near deathers um, that really was not even well talked about in 2018.
okay.
Luckily, even in IONS, it wasn't too well talked about.
Wow.
So I was really, really grateful to be invited to the DNDE group early on, or when they first kind of opened it up in IONS.
Okay. And now share with us like who is that group and when did it start? And how can people find out about that group?
Yeah. So if you go to isgo.events.org, I believe, you can find free sharing groups, and the Distressing Near Death Experience group is the second Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. Eastern. But if you've had a pleasant experience, or you don't even know, or you had a specific religious experience, they have sharing groups all like of all types of different days, different times, different reoccurrences. So that's how you can get involved with those free sharing groups. I think it probably started in 2020, maybe a little earlier. I
Okay.
started in 2021, I believe, or 2022 with them.
So how many conferences have you been to now? And obviously I met you presenting at Phoenix. And how many years have you actually presented as well?
Well, I've been to three conferences and presented at two.
Okay. So the one before Phoenix, I think I heard was Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And that was your first presenting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, okay, now I want to hear about these books because I mean, it's so fascinating, right? I mean, we live these lives, our soul, we choose our parents. I tell people the birth chart's the map of your life, the remembrance of your soul. And, I'm trying to figure out what have you learned from the sickness, the illness, and the NDE that now has led you to be Brianna, this spiritual life coach and doula to help the collective and the author. And I'm sure you've brought this to light through your books, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And I apologize. I have been falling off this couch for like 40 minutes. So I'm just going to move.
That's all right.
Okay, there we go. So about think October of 2022, I was like, where's all this leading to? My sickness is still progressing. I ended up with, some other illnesses and just more crazy stuff. It's like, okay, what is all this about? Like, I tried to go back to the old Bri, and that wasn't working, and I just didn't know. So I got into this state, and I was exploring different paths. It was very reminiscent of my NDE, but a lot less crazy that led up to it. And I wasn't dead. I was like partially in this world and the other world. And I was like, oh, all my answers can be, or all my questions can be answered here. So I was, everything's a freaking metaphor always. And I would go down a path and it would be dark or it'd be light and, things would be revealed. I finally get down this path where I'm supposed to move to Montrose, Colorado. And I was like, what am I going to do there? And there's this river and there were books thrown in the river as stepping stones. You're saying I need to write some books? I'm not a reader. I'm not an author. Fine. I'll do it. And so I wrote my first book, White Flame, and I didn't know how my illness and my spiritual life were connected yet, other than, there was this crossover um, with different things, and there was definitely this huge convergence with my NDE, but I didn't know how to explain it yet because I didn't understand it yet. So it's mostly my paranormal and metaphysical journey that leads up to my near-death experience. And that goes into detail about these dark entities, the paranormal, the metaphysical. I was astro traveling involuntarily. I saw apparitions. I mean, just crazy paranormal, metaphysical stuff. My gifts were, pretty blown open beforehand. I just didn't see them as gifts because it was all pretty scary.
Right.
So my first book is pretty strictly about my paranormal metaphysical experience and my NDE that goes into detail. That fourth realm, I actually spent so much of my time in that, we could talk about just that dimension for probably 45 minutes. So it's all detailed in there. The after effects too for, the next few years. My second
So,
book,
okay, second, go
oh,
ahead.
um, my second book is Wired to Be Dysfunctional, and my mom and I actually co-authored it together.
Say the
Um,
title again.
Wired to Be Dysfunctional.
Okay.
And my sister, who has her master's in psychology, she went to a neurologist appointment with me while he was explaining my disorder. She comes out of it, she's like, "You're literally wired for dysfunction." Said, boom. So I'm keeping that.
Oh gosh.
So the book that my mom and I co-authored together is mostly, like I'd say, majority about the health issues, the chronic illness, the progression, all the pharmaceuticals they tried me on, all the misdiagnoses, how I felt, how my mom felt as a caregiver, as a mother, how I felt as a
Mm.
sick person, as a child. So it's this two-sided view, and we really wrote it more for the medical field as well as caregivers and people dealing with chronic illness.
And that's
Um,
so important for
yeah,
caregivers. Yeah, that's great.
yeah. So, it was such an honor because my mom and I have been through this together in such a powerful way that to co-author this book together was absolutely amazing.
I can imagine.
Then my third book, Leads to Nowhere. I actually got a deep brain stimulator surgery. So brain surgery for that condition. They finally gave it to me 12 years after I was told about it.
So
I
was this
finally
at
approved for it.
30 or 20? What age?
30. I was approved for it at 29 and had it at 30.
Okay. Okay.
And so a deep brain stimulator sends constant electricity to my brain. Well, it did. What happened was
So it works.
it did. It did until it didn't.
Oh,
Myoclonus dystonia is a very, as my doctor would put it, a cunning disorder, and it loves to rewire and re-screw things up, find its way around the system. So things were slowly going back downhill again, but I was like, it's fine. I've got time. I'm doing well. And I left my career in corporate America, and I had already written my White Flame book, and I was like, once that gets out, I can't go back to corporate. Like, they're gonna think I'm a crazy person. So I was like, cool, I'm gonna figure out what I'm actually meant to do finally. And that's when I looked into becoming a death doula, a spiritual coach. I did a bunch of different trainings with different holistic, things that help mentally, EFT, TFT, hypnosis, art therapy, down that stuff. And I was like, there's some things that I wrote in my subconscious out of survival. I want to rewrite those. It's time. So I dove into meditation, like a meditation I had no idea about. And I call it transcendental meditation. I'm not sure what, anyone else calls it, but I call it that because I transcend my body. That's what transcendental means. There's no mantras or anything, which is usually pretty typical for transcendental.
okay.
But doesn't matter. That's not the point. The point is the third or fourth time I did this meditation, I got back into that black space, that void, the place of nowhere where everything is. And in that, I saw my brain and my heart come together and rewire itself and heal. And I knew that I could turn my deep brain stimulator off and I'd be fine. 20 some years later after, starting this illness journey, and for me to just be like, I can shut this off, I'll be fine, was absolutely crazy. But I've been fine ever since I shut it off. And
so you did this in the spiritual realm through a meditation?
Yes. And when I did that, I realized just how connected my near-death experience was with my paranormal, my metaphysical, my illness, everything. So I wrote Leads to Nowhere because somebody asked me, well, are you going to get it taken out? It's like, well, maybe the battery. She said, well, are the leads just going to go to nowhere? It's like, oh, nowhere's where I healed myself. Yes, that is where it is. So that is more about my death doula profession, the healing, how they're connected, and everything like that.
Wow, that's so much, Bri. So I'm really curious. Do you connect to people from the other side, whether it's through your own family or when you're working with your clients? Do you receive messages and communication from the other side?
I do when it comes to medical stuff or kind of how to guide them. So intuitively, yes, but not like a medium or anything. I don't hear from their ancestors or anything that I know of. They just come through.
So it's more medical intuitive for them,
yeah,
for your clients. So that's so powerful. So let me ask you this, because this is really interesting. What you're speaking of, you hear this from a lot of indigenous or ancient cultures, and the CIA has even come out with studies, about us living in like this matrix and a hologram and all this stuff, right? And finding different codes, numerical codes that can heal us. Do you feel that going into the void and the dimensions and the NDE, that eventually is exactly how you were able to go back into it? And was it through the meditation, but would you also say in a way it was really like almost astral traveling to it? And is that like kind of like the key for like healing in the physical, going through the spiritual?
Yeah, so there was kind of two different questions there.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
astral traveling, or are you healing, and are you healing yourself from the spiritual to the physical? So because I have astral traveled a few different times, and that has been very different than the meditative state I get into,
Okay.
I can't give you a solid answer on that. I believe potentially if you astral travel starting from the right emotional frequency, but through meditative practices or other elevational practices that give you higher elevated emotions, then you get into the right realm. Like you can't just go to any dimension, any realm, which I feel astral traveling is good for.
Okay.
You have to get specifically close or back to home, or back to where we originate, back to where we are source again. And then source creates, therefore we can create.
Well, that's so powerful because, okay, so the reason I was asking like that, and I know, sorry, my brain was just like going, because it's, I know that you've experienced and do both. For myself, when I was in coma, I astral traveled from the hospital. While I was in coma, I died 3 times. So I think it was after the second time I died, I actually astral traveled to my home, saw my wife and a friend slash business associate, and saw one of my 4 sons, but one of my 3 sons that live at home, one of my twins, saw him and he saw me. Now, my wife never saw me, but my son, he saw me, and he was in, this is fascinating, 4K technology, where my wife and our friend, both of those ladies, they were in 90s VHS technology. Very different from the 4K. Now could have been that they were both healing still and coming off of having COVID. But my son, I find that fascinating that one, I came to the home, and when I awakened out of coma, immediately that was my first question. I was asking my wife, I'm talking through the trach, who was at the house? I wanted to know if what I experienced was real,
Yeah.
because for me, and I want to find out for you, I didn't know that I had kind of like gone to another dimension and died, or almost, coded or whatever, and was on a vent. I had no clue. It was just like there was no darkness. Everything just is movie vignettes. Everything had just continued. So when you went out and left your body, was there knowledge of that, or was it just a continuation and going into these other spaces?
Yeah, no knowledge ever. Every time I've astral traveled, it was just, it was continuous. There was one time where I realized something was very wrong and I thought I was in the wrong place. And
Mm.
specifically, I looked at a wristband. All of them have always been black, and it was yellow and orange. I was like, that's not right. That is not. Everything else was the same, but my wristband was different. I called my mom from 9 different dimensions one time I was astral traveling to try to find the right one. Other than that, like there was no like Earth or like this realm or this dimension this time to another one. That was the only instance where I was eventually like, oh, something's off. All the other times it was continuous.
Wow. So, what insights and tips would you share with people for, dealing with NDEs or spiritual transformative experiences in terms of integrating themselves back into this reality? like in terms of not just coping, but thriving? Like, like what are the tips? Because I hear a lot of people say some of your spiritual gifts or experience after the NDE, it can take up to about 7 years for all of them to come online. What's your thought and views with that? And then how would you, give a roadmap of like navigating after the NDE for the collective?
Yeah, and after was so, so hard for me. The first year I went into major depression. I went into a completely different mode of survival. I even attempted to get back to my home, taking drastic measures, um, which ended up putting me into a coma. So I
Wow.
absolutely understand how hard it is coming back from an NDE and trying to reintegrate. Everything for me was different. I had new gifts. My body felt weird. Felt like I was shoved into a sausage casing. I didn't understand anything. I didn't understand this reality. So then I did talk to some other NDEers pretty early on. One was an actual therapist, one was just an NDEer. And joining IAMS was absolutely essential. It didn't help right away, but it really helped me build a foundation. And I've looked into other near-death study organizations or near-death organizations, and IAMS really has been my favorite.
Yeah.
So I think IAMS is a huge first step. Highly,
I didn't even
highly.
know there were others. I've only known IAMS, and I feel content with that right now.
I'm so, so excited for IAMS. And then as much as it sucks, especially because I am not necessarily a patient person and I just want to understand things now and I want to do things now and get it now. Um, it does honestly take time. I was even warned it could, the first 7 years are the hardest, and then when you hit that 7 year mark, things get really hard again. And I just realized I'm at the 7 year mark and I understand why things have gotten hard again.
Oh no,
Um, but you
I
know,
thought it's supposed to all calm down.
um, so I think so. PMH Atwater writes about the 7 years, and I'm not sure how long after the 7 years, like if it's 6 months, a year, or whatever, that things kind of get chaotic again. But definitely finding your home, finding your tribe. And it doesn't have to be where Eric and I met. It doesn't have to be where, these distressing near-death experiences. It could be, you can find it in a religious NDE group or a non-denominational one or an atheistic one, or although I'm not sure there's too many atheistic ones because not too many people haven't experienced something. There are some, but just all sorts of different types of group. Find your home, find your tribe, and that will help build the foundation of healing.
I love it. So this one is kind of interesting. Have you, since the NDE, experienced any alien or ET or UFO experiences?
Um, Specifically aliens and ETs, no. I've kind of seen UFOs throughout my paranormal experience, or metaphysical experiences. So I have seen UFOs. But
Okay.
something I did see was this grid of, kind of, you mentioned that some people we think we're in a simulation or a matrix.
Yeah.
Well, I did see this grid a few times around our world. That was kind of cool and crazy. But, nothing too outside of that.
Wow. Well, I have to laugh when you said that you were not so patient. And I'm like, of course, you have an Aries moon. There's no way you could be patient.
No, I'm never
Aries
patient.
moon. And so, okay, I mean, you're kind of aware, right? You were born on a full moon. Like that is, I mean, a couple hours after, but basically, Libra sun, Aries moon, you were born on a full moon. Y- You know, do you really feel now you're walking in your purpose and you know like why you incarnated here on earth and what's your soul's journey and mission?
I feel like I'm close. I feel like I'm close. I
Well, you're still
definitely,
young.
yeah.
You got plenty of time to discover. Oh,
I definitely know that the death doula and the spiritual coach is a huge purpose of mine.
yeah.
I'm just not sure how that all fits in together yet.
Okay. And see what I find so fascinating is, the spiritual gifts where it was such a rough part of life early on. Now, where would you label it as?
I'm grateful. I mean, absolutely grateful for all of it because everything I have experienced has made me a better, well, person, a better soul, a better death doula, a better spiritual guide. I mean, I've dealt with paranormal, I've dealt with trauma and abuse and illness and death and dying and and
Dot, dot,
financial
dot.
success, financial ruin, like so many things. I feel like I can connect to so many different people and come with authenticity.
And that's what it's all about, right? Pluto Aquarius, the age of Aquarius, the highest frequency, right? At first, you got like gratitude, joy, love, but by far, number one is authenticity, right? You can only be Bri, and that's more than enough. And so, it's really powerful and magical to hear your story. I hope that there's no more health relapses, and I'm just inspired by what you've experienced and how you've overcome and healed, but how you are now helping to guide the collective. Do you think about these books? And I think about all of this together, even though it's only 33 years of Bri, do you in ways see this potentially as like a cinematic, like a movie or something?
Um, there's definitely been a lot of plot twists. I think too many plot twists for our average movie. Maybe a TV series.
I love that. Well, I would definitely watch it. So, you know, you'll have to keep me and the audience updated because I think that it would now. So, but this is a fascinating piece. You kind of shared about dad, but the younger sister, where is she at now in terms of really understanding the two of you having, the same home, but such different lives and experiences, even with the health. Where's she at physically and spiritually in life?
Um, physically, I think pretty well. Spiritually, I think on the outside, she's very calm and collected and sure of herself, but on the inside, I think there's a battle going on.
Hmm. Yeah. And I could imagine, does your mom feel a comfort, or does she have a little, I can only imagine as a parent, a little bit of stress and anxiety just that's always like on her right shoulder, waiting for you to kind of potentially have a downturn. Like, has she spoken about that? Like, how does she feel?
About my potential downturns,
Yeah, and just your health and where you're at now.
well, sometimes she'll be like, "Yes, you're on the right track. You're finally over it. You're gonna do it. You're gonna like everything's gonna be great." And then just this year alone, I had two fatal diagnoses and an emergency surgery right before the IANS conference. So it's like both of us, I feel like, are very into that way, like, "Oh yes, it's finally over. We finally did it." And then it's just like, nope.
So, what was the emergency surgery?
So I had a hemorrhagic ruptured ovarian cyst that it bled so much and so bad. My ovary was actually rupturing by the time they got to it. It had done ovary torsion. There was no blood flow, but the cyst was still bleeding internally, and my ovary was rupturing by the time they got to it. And that was exactly 48 hours before I flew to the IANS conference because, like you said, I don't have patience and I was not going to miss the conference no matter what.
Oh, Bri, I had no idea that. So, honey, were you still in the conference? Were you like in total pain?
Yeah.
Oh, Bri. Oh my God. Nobody would have ever known. Like you are okay, you are like literally a walking like a miracle, but that you guys, that's that Aries moon for you. You were not you were determined. Oh my
I
gosh.
am so. Um, Somebody told me that there's two types of people. I don't believe there's only two types of people ever, but people who are motivation driven and comfort driven. I'm guessing you know which one I am.
Oh my gosh. So then after the conference, did you just like fall out and like go to sleep for a week?
No, because I had to reschedule a couple of job interviews I had before leaving for Spain for 10 days, which was 7 days after the conference.
Oh my, wait a minute, wait a minute. That's not even safe after all that for you to be traveling like that. So obviously, did you make it to Spain?
Oh yeah, I had a great time. I was still in some pain and still, feeling repercussions, but I was so motivated. It was a dream vacation and I was not going to let it go.
Oh my God. Oh, excuse me. Oh my gosh, Bri. Wow. Like, okay, you threw me for a curveball. I didn't know. I didn't know you experienced that. I'm so sorry to hear that because you guys at the conference, this young lady was just like supercharged, on fire, so eloquent, so poised, so like to know that you were under that type of pain and pressure. I'm just blown away. Like that's seriously, that's you know, you're a tough cookie. That's something. So then after Spain and all that, did you kind of finish taking care of your health?
Oh, absolutely not. I started a job 2 days later.
Okay, how are you feeling right now after all that? Because the conference was just, Labor Day weekend.
Yeah. I also started a new relationship, which is going very well.
Well, congrats on the new relationship. I'm glad to
Thank
hear
you.
that. Gosh.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I feel like I'm doing okay. Um,
Okay. So, okay, not to get too personal, but like you don't just tell the new boyfriend like everything, do you? Like how do you like maneuver that in terms of all that you are and all that you've experienced?
um, I try to approach with caution, but I'm also everywhere online. I mean, you can find everything. All my socials, I've got 6,100 followers on Facebook, um, 5,000 friends, books that sell around the world. I'm an international speaker. I've been on more than 2 dozen podcasts. So my stories aren't quite secret, but I definitely don't be like, hey, this is me. Like, if you want to know me, either it's going to take time and we'll talk about things as they progress and evolve, like relationships do, or they can do research, like they can be like, oh, hey, I found you on da 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 da. Um, it's like I don't really worry
I
about
saw
it.
your story on this podcast. Like, is this you? Like, so I mean, but so obviously, then you're kind of saying like in a way. So he knows about Bri.
A little bit, yeah. It's slowly progressing, as it should in our relationship, I feel.
That's great. Well, I wish you the best with that.
Thank
Um,
you.
so okay, so as we wrap up, I want you to share again. where people can reach you and find out about your books. But also, I want you to, well, I got three things at once. Sorry. I tend to overwhelm people with that, but it's just my brain. Like I'm a little, but like, so first, I want you to share all your information again. And then second, who is the person or what are they experiencing that they can kind of find that comfort and come to you for the grief, for the death doula, for the chronic illness? Like, not saying like give me your archetype of a client, but some people may not know, like, oh, can Bri help me with this? So I want you to kind of let people know, because in my audience, there may be a lot of people who just lost a loved one or who are dealing with chronic illness. God knows I dealt with it for years with valley fever since 2013. And it wasn't really all cleared up till I was in coma and got real medicine that Western medicine had denied me. Oh God, for years. So to share that with the audience, how they can reach out to you again, and then who are the types of different, of different people that come to you, so that maybe it's, it can ring a bell and inspire someone. Like, you know what, I'm dealing with that. I need to talk to Bri.
Yeah. So once again, the website is BRI0NICLLC.com. There you can find my services, my books, my courses, as well as my socials, which is Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I do TikTok mini series. I post daily inspirational things on Facebook. And if you are going through any kind of grief, not just the loss of a loved one, but the loss of a life due to illness, a loss of a job, loss of, something important to you. I have experience not only through myself, but helping others with all sorts of different types of grief and losses. And to process grief, it really helps us become our healthiest version spiritually and physically, as well as if you want to birth into your authentically or spiritually authentic self, I can help you get there. And if that means your spiritually authentic self is at the end of life and it's ready to transition, I'm there.
Wow. Thank you, Bri. This has been really fascinating. It's even given me more insights than at the conference. And you are definitely a force of nature and an inspiration. So thank you for sharing your gifts, your heart. Any thoughts for the collective for 2025, energetically and spiritually, where we're at and where we're heading, and maybe a message of hope?
Yeah, absolutely. Gratitude and authenticity are absolutely our most powerful emotions. They're our highest frequencies. You get there, you change your reality. And if you would like any of my services, just reach out to me and tell me that you saw me on the show, and I'll hook you up with a special discount.
I love that. Well, you guys, you heard it from Bri. This was awesome and so much fun. And thank you. Please listen, go follow her on TikTok, IG, Facebook. I think you should really come to YouTube. I think do great on YouTube with the long form stuff, because I think that you've got a lot to share with people. So that would be really fascinating. And make sure you guys hit the like, subscribe, and please comment down below. And don't hesitate to share this episode with people, because life is something. And we all go through a myriad of different experiences that sometimes we don't understand. Sometimes we can't define it or label it. And sometimes with sicknesses and illnesses, Western medicine can fail each and every one of us. Bri and I both have been misdiagnosed and undiagnosed and failed by Western medicine, but you don't have to give up. And, you know, there is help out there. So please reach out to Bri and share this podcast episode with people, because it's definitely inspiring, and Bri's story is more than inspiring. So thank you so much for watching today, episode 273 of my Knowledge is Love Astrology podcast. Bri, thanks again.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everybody.